Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan, and we're back here in Studio 130 for another episode of Iowa's favorite conservative podcast. I'm joined here in studio today with John Hendrickson, who was laughing before we started, continues to laugh, and we'll see if we can get through this. Chris Ingstad's here today to offer his special expertise on what promises to be a fun-filled, action-packed episode. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Was the camera recording when I got caught in my own chair? When I trapped myself?
Yes.
Boy, the viewer's in for a treat then.
So the pre-production today was Chris fiddling with his chair. Gets in, starts monkeying with all the levers, bounces up and down, hurts his back. Are you okay?
Know. I am. We may go back to the handheld microphone for me. I don't know.
You wanted a new mic. I got you a fancy new mic and the boom and everything, and he just wants to go back doing it rock star style.
Too nice for me.
Yeah. Johnny, you ready to roll?
I am, yes.
Okay, good, because I got something for you today, too.
Okay.
I like to kind of spring it on you guys sometimes.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, we're going to start off with a construction update. That's my new audio effect, guys. Do you like it?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I actually went out. That is a sample of me actually going out there and recording these guys.
Oh, I was going to say.
It's actually the actual work.
As much as the sound effect was good, there's a chance the listener's going to hear the real thing.
Yeah, no, they seem to have left for a while. But So what we got going on here, came in today and equipment was going. They seem to have put some new topsoil down on part of it.
I think the landscaping's begun.
Okay.
The hardscaping is done.
Okay.
Now we're beautification.
Okay. Let me tell you what, and I don't know what else they're going to do to make it better. The beautification part of it, I mean, they've already got that nailed. But that's called sarcasm, John.
Yeah.
Okay.
From your premier seat, can you see, is there any bit of that dual patio that's in the shade?
No.
So it's going to be completed just in time for us to just bake in the full sun if we decide to go use it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The all stone, that is going to be lovely. Can't wait. Well, good. Well, we'll keep you posted. We're only maybe 2 or 3 months from a full year that they've been working on this project. Yeah. So hopefully it'll look like something at some point, but we'll keep you abreast of the what's going on. Okay. Well, one thing that I wanted to touch on today, gentlemen, that I found kind of interesting was our state treasurer, who had a release this week talking about unclaimed safe deposit boxes. Did you see this? Did you see this in the news?
I did.
Okay, good.
I did.
So that's fun. I'm kind of a auction aficionado. I grew up going to estate sales and love looking at stuff and bidding online. And so I clicked through here to see what kinds of things were up for sale. But presumably someone just abandons a safe deposit box, and after a certain period of time, you got to do something with it. And so that then goes to the state treasurer, just like the Great Iowa Treasure Hunt, which the state treasurer's office administers.
Victoria found me on that one time.
Yeah, I'm on it. I just have never gotten around to doing it. Okay. So did you get some money out of it?
Yeah.
Was it worth your time?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a pretty simple form to fill out, and I got a check relatively quickly. I would, in a way that almost sounds like, boy, what more sort of big government bureaucracy could there be than trying to reclaim unclaimed property from the state and this and that?
Right.
As many things are in Iowa, actually it functioned very smoothly, very easy, very user-friendly.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, good. So have you had a chance to look at the safe deposit box auctions?
I reverted back to 8-year-old me and just looked at the baseball card.
Right. Because that's the lead item here. Where John, we'll get to your fun stuff in a minute. So did you actually look at this?
Well, I scrolled through it, and some of the cards that I saw, Chris, I'm not sure are safe deposit box worthy. Frankly, I'm not sure if they're cardboard box worthy.
Right. I mean, there is some. I don't even know what some of this currency is. Bank of Jamaica, $2 bill. But a lot of basketball cards that look kind of like your standard run-of-the-mill, buy them. They're not particularly rare or anything. It looks like, though, right on the top. Did you see the ones right on the top?
It looked like there may have been a Michael Jordan rookie.
Really? Because I'm looking at a Bo Jackson rookie.
Oh, well, I mean.
Football.
That's not exactly a priceless card, though.
No, but it's still cool, and I never pass up a chance to talk about Bo Jackson.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Yep.
John, were you a Bo Jackson fan?
No.
Really? You don't want to tell any stories about you watching Monday Night Football when you ran over Brian Bosworth?
No,
you got nothing. Yep. Okay.
So I was living in Kansas City. You just lost your TV feed, by the way.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I was living in Kansas City when Bo Jackson came up with the Royals, and so got to have the full Bo experience. Yeah, incredible.
Yep. Probably the most impressive athlete I've ever watched play sports.
I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah. So now we got robbed, but he was a very good running back football player that
I thought he was baseball.
He also played baseball.
But he was an all-star outfielder for a while, too. So.
Who had his career cut short because of a pretty catastrophic hip injury.
Not as good as Ken Herbeck, though.
Much. Okay. You know, as we often say, we can't argue with John's own lived experiences, and I'm not going to try to take down Kent Herbeck.
That's right. So, okay, well, here's John where we need to. So, a lot of the remaining items here, which actually some of the stuff's pretty cool. There's some pretty old stuff, but looking through this, there are a 1946 Iowa statehood centennial commemorative $50. Bidding is up to $40 on that. There's a 1900 $2.50 gold Liberty coin. It's up to $300. So just there's some interesting turn of the century kinds of currency and whatnot. But John, do you have a safe deposit box?
I do not know.
Okay, but you do have a sizable collection of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, so what if you just abandon this stuff and walk away, what are the prized possessions at auction that are going to really command top dollar out of the Hendrickson collection?
Well, I don't know.
So I'm putting you on the spot, but like, what is that thing where like, you know what, this one's actually worth some money? If you don't want to say because you're afraid of, thieves or anything.
No, I just, there's probably not a lot of value in some of my campaign pins.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the oldest one I have is a 1916 Charles Evans Hughes for president, but it's probably not worth much.
Yeah, those are bumper stickers, right?
I know it's it's a actual pin.
Oh, okay.
But I do have a rare 1932 Republican pin that's probably the most expensive I have. It's worth a couple $100.
Nice.
So
that's very cool.
How about you, Chris?
Oh my gosh, I've got somewhere in a dark corner of the basement is a stack of old comic books that might have a few in there that are worth something, but probably not a lot. My baseball cards are a lot like the stack here. They're not worth much, and they're still sitting there. In fact, any ones that probably were worth something have been cast to the wind by my kids that thought they were fun for, building towers out of and stuff. Yeah. I don't have any good political memorabilia. So, yeah, nothing good. You've been a collector of some things in the past.
I've collected some things. Well, let me go back to the baseball card thing.
Okay.
Maybe my Bo Jackson 1988 Fleer autographed Bo Jackson card.
Do you have a kind of a price range of what something like that would go for?
It's probably worth about $15, but man,
that's awesome.
But boy, do I think it's cool. I will tell you the thing that I legitimately like, and again, probably not worth much, and it's way more in sentimental value. But my grandfather, I've got one of my grandfathers was a fighter pilot, World War II. So I've got his gold wings, and I've got his gold naval aviator ring, and I think those things are cool historically. And then they also have just immense personal sentimentality to me.
Yeah.
And can I use that to pivot or segue to something else I wanted to talk about today?
Pivot to wherever you need to pivot to.
I was going to, regardless of the
I'm kind of done on like memorabilia.
Your show notes are done.
I'm done.
To the end. Yeah. Hey guys, today is D-Day.
Yes.
June 6, 1944. And that's an amazing thing, right? It's when we decided to full on go take Europe back from the bad guys, and it was primarily our grandfathers and their brothers, and there were certainly women involved in that too, in a number of different roles. But it was amazing, right? And so many of these guys volunteered. I think I shared before that both of my grandfathers enlisted. They volunteered. They're not drafted. They enlisted. One still in December of 41, right in the hills of Pearl Harbor, and the other in 1942. And I was thinking about D-Day today and sort of famous Iowan D-Day specific stories. And I guess I'm not aware of lots and lots, but one that I am aware of was a gentleman named Jim Stopulus. Now, for our listeners, I figure everybody in the state knows Joe Stopulus. Joe's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Everybody knows him.
Yeah.
And Joe's cousin, Ted Stopulus, has been involved in Iowa politics and policy for a while and used to work in the Branstad administration, I know, and all those things. And so Joe and Ted are cousins, and they're grandsons of Jim Stopulus. Jim was born in Davenport, 1917, I believe. He lived to be 100 years old. And through that amazing life that he lived, and if you know either Joe or Ted, you're not shocked at all that their grandpa was a pretty amazing guy. But he flew not one, but two bombing missions on D-Day. He was an Army pilot and flew 2 missions over the Channel, then further bombed German positions in France. And it's awesome. You can look up stories about that in the Quad City Times in later years, or even other folks will talk about it. You can find Joe talking about him if you look up Joe's podcast. Pretty amazing. I think he stayed in the reserves for another 20 or 30 years. But again, just like you talk about, service to country and sacrifice and willingness to pitch in, and it was a different world back then. And the reality is, we literally had evil knocking on both sides of the ocean, and so many Americans answered the call to it. And frankly, I'm glad that the three of us weren't exactly, called to do that. Certainly, we've been involved in conflicts the last 20 or 30 years, right? And a number of folks served ultimately in the Middle East. But the scale and scope of what the 40s were like, and again, what our grandfathers and the folks of that generation did, was pretty amazing. And if there's sort of ever a singular day to remember it, if not Pearl Harbor, which pulled us in December 7th of 41, it's today, D-Day, June 6, 1944. And so, I don't know. If you don't know the story of your grandparents or folks in your family of that generation, go find it. Otherwise, just do a little Googling, right, and look some stuff up, and you'll be blown away by all sorts of stories of what these folks did to ultimately keep us safe and give us the freedom and the things we have today.
I think that's a great thing. Keep your family history alive on that. It seems that with each passing year, D-Day sort of fades just a little bit. And I remember growing up, like everyone commemorated D-Day. I mean, things just stopped. You'd see the parades on the news at night, and it was talked about, and it was present. I had a grandfather who was D-Day plus 12. He wasn't, dropped right off of the boats, but his group, his company, whatever, they cleared airstrips and repaired airstrips. So it may have actually run across.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. But they would go in and a little bit behind, and he had the interesting thing about my grandfather is he never talked about his service in World War II. And he would say he was there, but some of those guys would talk through their experiences, and he didn't, and he struggled with that his whole life. And the one time I remember him talking about it, I think it was the 40th anniversary of D-Day, where he lived in Oklahoma, and so we were there visiting, and they had the parade and everything, and he came in and sat down, and he just, for some reason on that day, he sat down for about 45 minutes and just unloaded and just told the stories. And then he got to a point where he was done, and he got up and walked out of the room. That was it. But I just remember thinking, what a privilege to be able to hear that. And then my other grandfather was in the Pacific, and those are important stories to keep alive, because that generation was amazing and did things that I don't even think those of us here can really relate to.
That's correct. John, do you want to share with the listener your the interesting tidbit about one of I think it was a minesweeper maybe, that one of your grandfathers was on?
Yeah, my grandfather served in the Navy in World War II, and he was in the Pacific side and he was on a minesweeper, and afterwards that boat was decommissioned, and it was purchased by John Wayne.
Oh, nice.
And so I don't know if my grandfather ever knew that, because he was a big John Wayne fan, but I stumbled across that just looking into the boat he served on, and he had passed away by the time I.
Yeah,
it was John Wayne's like personal yacht that cruised around from Newport, California.
Yeah, no, and I've been to Normandy and the American Cemetery in Normandy, and and maybe the most common visual of that is in Saving Private Ryan
Sure.
when they're walking out there. But to see that is, there's certain things you see around the world that just sort of grab you. And John, I haven't been there, but I suspect that Gettysburg may be one of those. You talk about Civil War history, and that this thing happened in this place, and it's so real and present. And no matter how many years have passed, it grabs you that this significant thing is there, and there's fields of mostly crosses, and those sacrifices are just immense. But anyway. That's a very good thing to drop on us in the middle, and that was not in the show notes, but I appreciate that. So
there we go.
Okay, we're gonna do a little quick roundup of what's going on in the Iowa caucuses, because that's really the show right now in Iowa. But and I'm gonna, because we could talk about this all afternoon, but we've got former Vice President Mike Pence is going to be making his announcement this week.
Yeah,
so,
Wednesday in Ankeny, I think.
So coming to Iowa to do it. Clearly, he has, his strategy is an Iowa strategy, and that's the beauty of the Iowa caucuses, is his chance.
Christie is getting in today, in New Hampshire, not Iowa.
That doesn't surprise me either. It'll be interesting to see where Christie kind of positions himself. I know he has been critical of President Trump, but he's also been very critical of Governor DeSantis and others. So maybe he's just going to go down that path, but it'll be interesting. A couple of quotes here. So Tim Scott, who recently got in the race, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, was on The View, which we don't usually talk a lot about.
I think it's on the same time as Matlock. So we don't see it. I want to play this quote, and it's just a little bit of a whole longer stretch where the hosts here are really trying to go after him for some of the comments they've had in the past that he's sort of doesn't get it on systemic racism, and that he may be a sellout or just doesn't understand. But I thought he did really well, so I'm going to play this real quick.
One of the things I think about, and one of the reasons why I'm on the show, is because of the comments that were made, frankly, on this show, that the only way for a young African-American kid to be successful in this country is to be the exception and not the rule. That is a dangerous, offensive, disgusting message to send to our young people today, that the only way to succeed is by being the exception. I will tell you that if my life is the exception, I can't imagine.
But it is.
But it's not, actually. It's
been 114 years.
Yeah, so the fact of the matter is we've had an African-American president, African-American vice president. We've had 2 African-Americans to be secretaries of the state in my home city.
And he goes on from there to talk about economic advantages and everything. But I play that, not that I know that we necessarily need to dive too far into it, but that's a pretty powerful voice, I think, to have in the Republican primary field. And I just thought he did a tremendous job of defending himself in if for no other reason, in a room that wasn't friendly to him, but just stated what he believes, and it seemed very authentic. So I liked it. I wanted to play it. If you got any thoughts, you're welcome to give them. If not, John, Tim Scott, yes or no? You open to voting for Tim Scott?
Probably not.
Okay,
but
that's fair.
But I mean,
where's he at on trade policy?
I don't know. And,
that's the problem then, right?
That's right. But I mean, I think he made a good point.
Yeah.
On The View, and I don't know why any Republican would ever want to subject themselves on that program. But I think he raised an important point, and he can certainly speak to some of those issues better than any of us can. But I mean, there has been advances for minorities, tremendous advances that often get underplayed by the left, and I think Senator Scott is just an example of that.
I guess I think there's room for Tim Scott in this field. I think you're going to see him get some traction as we move through the summer and the fall.
I think
I'm not
there's
predicting where he lands, but there's definitely room.
Yeah, I think there is definitely room, but I don't know if he's. I question how conservative he is. I think he's more of a moderate, which troubles me a little bit.
To be fair, that could be said for a great many people that brandish themselves as conservatives. They're mostly to the left of you.
I don't know about that.
Oh, okay. Well,
sometimes I feel like me, Chris, and the gnome are all moderates compared to, I don't know.
It's all good. Okay. So I have one other thing that I want us to talk about in our caucus roundup. And there was an article in Axios. This was in the national one, but about Governor DeSantis's, the title is DeSantis Iowa Plot, which I suppose just makes it sound slightly nefarious, but
it does.
Whatever. But it's just exploring their campaign plan and talking about how much money they have. And I think if I remember reading this right, is beginning with a $5 million ad buy through July 4th. That's a lot of money this early in a race.
Chris, so, how wise is it to have that sort of outlay this early?
Well,
I mean, even if he can assume that he will continue to get big dollars to keep spending, how impactful is that spending in July for a vote that's not cast till January or February?
Look, the traditional historical wisdom is that you want to stockpile as much cash as you can, blow it all at the end, and that's. I wonder if in this day and age you have to get out a little bit, or especially at the presidential level, to make the case, to kind of frame things up, or maybe define your opponent or whatever. When I see look, they've got a lot of money. This article says that the super PAC is starting with $82 million, which is this in a primary race is a lot. But it's still betting that you'll be able to continue to cash flow the operation. And if your donors don't come in, you couldn't have some trouble if you burn that was kind of what happened to Scott Walker, if you remember back to 2016. His burn rate was just too high and didn't get enough traction to keep up on it. But there's a quote in here because it's talking about the actual strategy from a messaging standpoint. And John, I shared this with you and I haven't shared it with you. So this is from Jeff Rowe, who is the top advisor to the DeSantis campaign. I know Jeff Rowe. He's a national consultant, a strong conservative who's been very effective at winning elections. So I mean, and I have respect to Jeff. He knows how to win. So if he says something, it's worth paying attention to. Here's his comment. Was first thing, the fight for the soul of the party isn't about tax cuts or trade deals. He goes on, it is about the cultural combat that we have as a country. And then he goes on to make the case for DeSantis as a culture warrior for this time. I mean, from the top, they're going all in on cultural battle, cultural issues.
Chris,
do you agree with Jeff Rowe?
Well, I guess I was going to ask you because I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to winning elections.
Yeah, but I asked the question.
Okay. I'll try to phrase my question in the form of an answer.
We can recast that. We're all three Iowans. We're all three conservative Iowans who all three of us are going to participate in the caucuses. And we know a lot of people who are like-minded. Do you think he's on to something with that statement? Speaking as Iowans.
I think if we want to just use culture wars, and I don't.
And however you want to phrase that, it means different things, different people.
Right. I don't know. I think I'm kind of lost. And I think the fact that he talks about the soul of the party, and maybe that's the part that I'm stuck on.
Yeah.
Is the party and frankly government in charge of the culture and the family and those values, right? Or is that and maybe that's just what I'm stuck on now. Because I tend to think that a lot of people who would maybe agree with Ron DeSantis on the, again, culture wars, use that terminology, probably also agree with DeSantis on taxes and I don't know about trade policy. That's a wild card, right, John? But other sort of more traditional political points. But I don't know if those two issues meet in the party, which is what it sounds like Jeff Rowe's trying to say.
Yeah, John,
I would agree with them in part. I mean, if you look at even the issues that drove this legislative session were largely cultural, and the base of Iowa Republicans tend to be more social conservatives. And I would agree that any candidate cannot move to the left on cultural issues, and so.
Yep.
But here's where I think he's mistaken because, and not understanding the full context of what he said. Cultural issues are important, and there's been a cultural war going on for decades, and so I agree with him on that. But and he has a point because we can't go back to the old tax cuts and limited government message that Bush.
Can we edit that out?
Yeah.
When John says we can't go back to tax cuts.
I'm going to specify that though, and I mean the tax cut and limited government message that was used by the old Bush, McCain, Romney, Ryan wing of the party. We all remember Romney's 50-point economic plan. And but the other thing, here's the mistake that, and this is something I think that President Trump did really well in 2016, is he elevated the issue of trade. And that is going to be hard, I think, for Governor DeSantis, because coming from a state that I don't know if he's familiar with these issues, but we're running a $1 trillion trade deficit, and a big issue that all candidates need to take seriously is China. Mm-hmm. And for example, we've lost 4 million jobs to China, and those are manufacturing jobs. In Iowa alone, we lost over close to 34,000 jobs to China. Most of those are manufacturing. And so I think any candidate who's going to appeal to blue-collar workers, like President Trump did, that broke the Democratic wall in 2016, is going to have to deal with the issue of trade. And the other thing is that the other issue that I think people are going to expect, at least Republicans, is immigration, both addressing legal and illegal immigration, and the harm that just reckless immigration has done, especially in the last few years. So those two issues, I think, trade, immigration, are going to be central. The same with foreign policy. And so, yes, culture is going to be important, but I think we're going to have to have candidates in this contest for the Republican presidential nomination who are going to have to go on record on trade, immigration, various foreign policy questions, because these are all essential. Same with energy and mining. I mean, these are important issues. And if you want to deal with inflation, you're going to have to start looking at, can we start mining again? Can we start producing our own energy?
Our own natural resources.
Our own natural resources. So I can understand why he's saying that, because a lot of Iowa caucus goers are focusing on social issues, but I think from a national perspective, winning the race, you're going to have to appeal to blue-collar workers. And, for example, I was talking to one supporter, and I asked him, what they thought about, Trump versus DeSantis. And this individual blue-collar worker said, Trump is for the working man, and therefore Trump is for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It reminds me of my grandfather saying that Democrats are the party of working man because FDR was, and they just bought into it forever. I'm not saying he's not, but sometimes the perception becomes,
And that's I think, and going back to even Senator Scott, I've seen his ads. They're nice ads full of flowery, optimistic language, but that's not going to sell. We've moved beyond the empty, optimistic rhetoric of Bush, McCain, Romney, and I think voters want something more.
I think you're onto something with trade and China and immigration and almost a foreign threats in border security thing. I think there's some real overlap there, because that is almost a cultural issue in a sense. I mean, especially more on the immigration side, but I mean, threats to the nation. I think where I come down, conservatives see some of these things as really existential threats to the world and our culture as we know it, and our nation as we have known it, and fighting back on that. And so the cultural issues, maybe the ones that Jeff Rowe's talking about, in addition to some China. I think those are absolutely what's our top of mind to Iowa voters. Yeah. I think they want to hear on it. They want to know. They want to know you're going to fight on it. But I also think, and this is a little more of a nuanced take on this, but you cannot separate these things. I mean, size and scope of government is a cultural issue, and it drives. Look, if you give government all of your money, or they extract it from you, and they grow government so that it invades every part of our lives, a government big enough to give you everything you want is strong enough to take everything you have. And that's a cultural issue too. And then that bleeds over into these other things that we're trying to fight against, is keeping government in its own sphere, and so that it does the things that only it's supposed to do, makes it easier or less likely we have to fight on all these other fronts. And so I want to hear from presidential candidates on tax policy. I want to hear from them on how they're going to fix the federal debt. And are we going to saddle the next generation? Because those are real issues that matter. And it doesn't make a candidate squishy. It doesn't make them a sellout or anything else. And they don't even have to focus on it. But I want to hear that it's important and that they are cognizant that we are heading down the road to perdition with how we manage finances in this country. Yeah,
as an example, there's provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that'll be expiring soon.
Yeah.
And so, we need to know, I mean, are they... What is their position on tax policy? I mean,
so the book Road to Perdition was written by my dad's next door neighbor growing up. A Muscatine native. Yeah.
Nice. It's a lot of Eastern Iowa stuff today.
Eastern Iowa is very strong.
Yeah. I don't disagree with Jeff Rowe on this. I think the issues that will drive the ultimate winner of the Iowa caucuses are those things that he's talking about. I think that's right. I think they probably have data that says it, but candidates will still have to speak to these issues, and they still matter. So, anyway,
that's one thing I miss about Tucker Carlson, because he was driving.
That's right.
These issues and actually forcing candidates to take a position on aid to Ukraine and some of these trade questions that a lot of candidates avoid because there's still a lot of corporate libertarian influence that wants to push a free trade agenda that I think is just a disaster. And and I want to just say that Senator Josh Hawley, who I think is a leader in the American First conservatism, he had an amendment on the debt ceiling debate in the Senate that would require a 25% tariff on all goods from China until the trade deficit with China would be brought down, and basically only 17 Republicans voted for that. I want to say Tim Scott did vote for that amendment, so I was pretty thankful.
But we'll keep you on here. We may work you around to
perfection is the standard that John looks for.
No, not perfection, but I was disappointed that our two senators did not vote for that amendment.
Yep.
Nor did they vote for Rand Paul's amendment either, which was discouraging.
Yeah. Well, we are going to have a lot to say on trade policy, John. I keep promising that, but I'm waiting for you to work it up, and we're going to record it, and it's going to be great. So, gentlemen, we are way over time, but I thought we covered a lot of ground today, a lot of good stuff. And so, with that all having been said, appreciate your contributions, and don't forget to like and subscribe the episode, share it with your friends, and with that, we will see you next time.